All right, happy Friday to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Remeisha. It is now time to track the tropics, and we definitely have a big time hurricane that we are still monitoring out there in the Gulf of Mexico, not that far from Houston. So of course we are keeping a close eye on things, and I'll let you know of any type of impacts potentially that the Houston area could have from Hurricane Rafael still out there in the Gulf of Mexico. I'll also give you an overview of what's happening across the rest of the Atlantic basin and let you know if we have anything else to worry about on this Friday. So let's get right to it. First of all, let's get an overview of where we've been so far for this hurricane season. And we definitely have had quite a few named storms out there. In fact, early on in the season, we started off with Tropical Storm Alberto, and then came along a Beryl, which rapidly grew to a Category 5 hurricane. But of course, it hit Houston back on July 8th as a Category 1 hurricane. Then we had Tropical Storm Chris. We had a series of hurricanes stretching from Debbie to Ernesto to Francine, Tropical Storm Gordon, and then we'll never forget Helene. Of course, it produced devastating, catastrophic flooding across parts of the Appalachians. Of course, a lot of wind damage in Florida. So it's been a monster of a season. We had Hurricane Isaac, Tropical Storm Joyce, another major hurricane hit. That was Kirk, which grew to a Category 4 briefly. Then we had Category 2 Hurricane Leslie, Milton, which at one point was a Category 5, Tropical Storm Nadine, Hurricane Oscar, Tropical Storm Patty, and of course, we are still dealing now with Hurricane Rafael, which at one point was a major Category 3 hurricane, now down to a Category 2. So we actually don't have a ton of names left on our official list of names for the 2024 hurricane season. Next name on the list would be Sarah, then we go down to Tony, Valerie, and finally, if we need to use it, we would have William. So we are getting pretty close to the end of hurricane season. That is the good news. So typically this is the time of the year where on average the number of tropical depressions, tropical storms, and hurricanes kind of starts to diminish out there or decrease. Of course, we really ramp things up in August and especially September, with the peak of hurricane season being September 10th. However, we are in the final leg, the final stretch of this hurricane season. And guess what? It's still fairly active out there. We've still got a hurricane and another area of disturbed weather that we're monitoring for potential tropical development. So let's talk about Hurricane Rafael. It is still spitting, churning, pretty much right smack dab in the center of the Gulf of Mexico. And you're thinking, man, is this thing going to head towards Houston and hit us? That certainly would be horrible, especially this late in the season, really any time of the season. But the good news is that over the last few days, the models have been trending farther south with Hurricane Rafael, and it looks like it will gradually get weaker as it encounters a more hostile environment in the western Gulf of Mexico. So at this point, it is still a Category 2 hurricane. It is still fairly healthy, but it's starting to get some of that drier air in the western Gulf wrapping into it. So actually, the well-defined eye wall that we had, not as well defined anymore. So that's a good sign. That's one of the first signs that it is finally starting to weaken a little bit more. So we did have winds around 110 miles per hour with Hurricane Rafael earlier today. Now winds are down to 100 miles per hour. So it is still officially a Category 2 hurricane, but it is getting weaker with 100 mile per hour winds as of the 3 p.m. advisory. We do have the movement to the west around 9 miles per hour. So notice it's not moving north. It's not moving northwest towards Houston. It's moving due west. And eventually, as we go into Monday and Tuesday, it's going to take more of a track to the south-southwest. So it will move even farther away from Houston. So it will likely make its closest approach to the Houston area over the weekend. In fact, as I put this into motion, this is the official National Hurricane Center forecast. You will see Rafael starting to weaken from a Category 2 back down to a Category 1 around midnight Saturday. And then it weakens even further down to a tropical storm as we go into Saturday night, Sunday. Then look what happens for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It takes a dive to the south and it weakens to a tropical depression by Monday and just a remnant low by Tuesday and Wednesday, just kind of falling apart in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico around the Bay of of Campeche. All right, so that means we don't have to worry about a direct hit from Rafael. However, it will continue to spread some tropical moisture to a big chunk of the Gulf Coast. And also it is going to kind of kick up the waters, have the waves a little bit stronger, and it will basically elevate those tide levels and give us a higher risk for some rip currents for this weekend. So guess what? If you're heading to the beach this weekend around Galveston, or if you're going over towards Bolivar Peninsula, things could be a little rowdy in the waters. If you're heading to Galveston Beach, not the best time to get in the water. If you're a tremendously great swimmer, maybe, but even then you need to be extremely careful. I do want to point out another feature on this map, and notice that cold front slicing through the center of Texas. That is going to be the main reason why Rafael will not be coming here. This front will be tracking to the east-southeast, and it will help to block Hurricane Rafael from heading in our direction. So this is the setup for the rest of today. Let's move forward to what's going to happen for the next few days. Well, like I said, the main story the next few days will be for gradual weakening of Rafael, because it's running into much drier air in the western Gulf of Mexico. This is our water vapor loop, and the orange indicates some of that drier air in the upper levels. And also we've got that front, that cold front moving through the state of Texas. So that's going to mean high wind shear. So when you got drier air, high wind shear, hurricanes don't like that. That slows them down and weakens them. So that is why we are forecasting that gradual weakening over the next few days. So the overall setup for Saturday will show Rafael going from a hurricane to a tropical storm, and it will likely continue on that westward track across the Gulf of Mexico. By Sunday, Rafael likely still a tropical storm, but not really getting any closer to Houston, just kind of hanging out very close to where it was on Saturday. And by Monday and Tuesday, it will start to take that dive more to the south and southwest. So like I said, if you're heading to the beach across southeast Texas this weekend, higher risk for rip currents, tide levels will be higher, some larger swells, some bigger surf, but no major impacts expected from Rafael. And hopefully it will just fall apart completely over the open water and not make any additional landfalls, because of course it did wreak havoc across western Cuba as it made landfall as a Category 3. All right, let's move on to what else we have out there. We've got one other area of disturbed weather that we're monitoring, and this is going to be very close to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. You can see the burst of orange and red. Those are some disorganized showers and storms out there right now, and this disturbance has the potential to possibly become a tropical depression or maybe tropical storm or Hurricane Sarah over the next week. But the National Hurricane Center has actually lowered that chance from a 20% chance yesterday, 30% chance earlier in the week, to a 10% chance for today. So that means the chances of this disturbance near Haiti, near the Dominican Republic, becoming Sarah is extremely low. However, it will continue to drift off to the west-northwest, likely making it into parts of the Bahamas, likely the southeastern and central Bahamas, before it falls apart. So we'll continue to monitor it, but the chance is very, very low that we'll have to worry about it blowing up into a big-time tropical system and maybe a hurricane. So of course, those are the two systems we're monitoring out there in the Atlantic basin right now. We've got one in the southwestern Atlantic, and we've got the other in the central Gulf of Mexico. Notice the water temperatures not quite as warm as they were early on in the season for the Gulf of Mexico and for the western Atlantic, but they're still pretty toasty temps. So it's still water warm enough to help to sustain a tropical system. But like I said, the combination of that wind shear and that drier air as Rafael pushes to the west should continue to weaken the system overall. So that is definitely some good news. So overall, we are looking pretty good for the Houston area for this weekend and next week. Like I said, our biggest risk from Rafael will be that risk for those dangerous rip currents. So you will want to be extremely careful if you get in the water. My advice, just stay out of the water for the weekend and just wait until this hurricane moves farther away. There will also be that risk for those higher tide levels, but no major impacts anticipated from Hurricane Raphael. All right, well, that will do it for your Friday tropical update. It's time to get excited for the weekend. Nothing from the tropics coming to make a direct hit to the Houston area, so that is some great news for us. Hopefully we can get through the next few weeks without getting any additional tropical hits in our area, and then that will be it. Hurricane season officially ending on November 30th. Well, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Stay safe out there. Once again, I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Remeisha Shade.